Have you ever been stuck on a decision where you just weren't sure what the right thing to do was? Yeah, we've all been there. Ethics? It's not just some big, dusty word for philosophers. It's this maze we have to navigate every single day. Is it about following the rules no matter what? Or is it about getting the best possible outcome? It gets complicated, and it gets complicated fast. But what if we could build a framework, a clear map for that maze? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do right now.
All right, so here's our game plan. First up, we're going to lay the foundation, get a handle on the basic building blocks of morality. Then we'll check out the different blueprints, the big ethical theories that tell us how to put it all together. After that, we'll take those blueprints out into the real world and really stress test them against different cultures and some pretty high-stakes jobs. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into a practical toolkit that you can actually use. So let's start at the very beginning. You can't build a house without knowing the difference between a brick and a 2x4, right? It's the same thing here. We can't build an ethical framework without understanding our core materials. So what is the real difference between morals, values, and ethics? Let's get our definitions straight.
Okay, let's kick things off with the most fundamental concept, morals. Think of these as principles for human well-being, stuff that's been passed down through generations of experience. But here's the thing you gotta remember. They are not static rules carved in stone. They're alive. They change, they adapt, they evolve based on a society's experiences, its knowledge, even its geography.
Now for a really crucial distinction, morality versus ethics. Morality, that's your personal compass. It's your individual gut check on what's right and wrong. Ethics, on the other hand, are more like the standardized maps that a whole society or a profession uses. They're the shared principles that guide behavior for the group. So your morals are what you consult privately, while ethics are the public guidelines you follow.
So if morals are the compass and ethics are the map, what are they made of? Well, they're both built from the same raw material, these core human values. And you see these 5 pop up in cultures all over the world, again and again. You can think of them as the basic ingredients we use to cook up all of our moral choices.
Okay, so we've got our building blocks, morals and values. But how do we actually put them together when we're staring down a really tough decision? That's where ethical theories come in. And you can think of them as competing architectural blueprints for how to build a moral choice.
Now, these blueprints usually fall into 2 major camps. On one side, you have what are called teleological theories. That comes from the Greek word for goal. And for these theories, it's all about the consequences. The end result is what matters. On the other side, you've got deontological theories, from the Greek word for duty. And here, the focus is all on the rules and your obligations. Some things, like telling the truth, are just right, and other things, like lying, are just wrong, no matter what happens afterward.
Let's make this a little more concrete with utilitarianism, which is a classic goal-based theory. This breaks down a pretty complex philosophy into a really practical 5-step method. It's almost like you're creating a moral spreadsheet. You list your options, you figure out who's affected, you try to calculate the impact on everyone's happiness, and then you choose the action that creates the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now let's contrast that with the duty-based view, which is captured perfectly in this quote from the philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant basically argued that you can't just use people to get to a good outcome. Why? Because every single person has inherent dignity and worth. This means some things are just off limits, period. So for Kant, the morality isn't in the result, it's in the intention behind the act. It's a total shift in focus, from consequences to principles. So we have these neat and tidy blueprints, right? One focused on outcomes, one focused on duties. But do they actually work in the messy reality of our world? Let's find out. It's time to stress test these ideas against the massive, unpredictable force that is human culture.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. Is there a single, universal right way to do things? Or does it change depending on where you are in the world? I mean, think about something as simple as giving a gift in a business setting. In one culture, it's a totally normal sign of respect. In another, it could be seen as a flat-out bribe. Understanding this is absolutely key.
And check this out. This illustrates that point perfectly. Just take a business contract. In Germany, that piece of paper is an ironclad rule book. End of story. But in Japan, it's more like a flexible guideline for resolving problems later on. This isn't just a difference in style, you guys. It reflects fundamentally different ethical views on things like promises, obligations, and relationships.
So why does a contract mean something so radically different in Germany than it does in Japan? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is this core cultural dimension, individualism versus collectivism. In individualist cultures like the US, personal success is king. But in collectivist cultures like Japan, group harmony is the top priority. And that one difference can change the entire ethical calculation of a situation. Okay, so we've looked at the big theories and we've looked at global cultures. Now let's narrow our focus way down and see how certain professions create their own specialized ethical codes, especially when the stakes are incredibly high. This quote, wow, it's chilling, but it powerfully frames why professional ethics aren't just a nice-to-have suggestion, they are an absolute necessity. When a single bad decision can have such catastrophic consequences, the ethical standards have to be rock solid. And because those stakes are so incredibly high, professions like engineering have developed these really clear codes of conduct. Now, all these principles are important for sure, but notice what's at the absolute top of the list. Hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. That isn't just one rule among many. It is the ultimate duty. It's the one that overrides everything else.
So, what kind of personal virtues does it take to actually uphold a code like that? Well, the first is integrity. And this isn't just about being honest, it's about a deep, profound consistency. It's when what you think, what you say, and what you do are all in perfect alignment, so other people can truly trust your work and your word.
Next up is courage, but we're not talking about running into a burning building here. In a professional context, we're talking about intellectual courage. It's the courage to face down really difficult technical problems, to take full responsibility for your work, and maybe most importantly, to speak up when you know something is wrong. And finally, honesty. And this breaks it down beautifully. There's truthfulness, telling the truth in the moment, but then there's trustworthiness, which is about maintaining that integrity over the long haul. And you absolutely need both. Truthfulness without trustworthiness is just a fleeting moment, while trustworthiness without truthfulness is just a facade. Whew! We have covered a lot of ground, from core values all the way to professional codes. Now, in our final section, let's bring it all home. Let's put it all together into a simple, actionable toolkit that you can use the next time you're facing a tough ethical choice. This framework, which is drawn from engineering ethics, is a fantastic guide for pretty much anyone. It gives you a clear, rational process to follow when you're in a tough spot. State the problem, get the facts, analyze your options, make a decision, and then, and this last step is arguably the most important one, don't just make a choice, be able to qualify and defend that choice with solid reasoning. That's the real difference between just a gut feeling and a truly ethical decision.
Because ultimately, ethics isn't some spectator sport that's just debated by philosophers in ivory towers. No, it's a skill. It's something we all have to practice. It's like a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. And with a clear framework like this one, you're just that much better equipped to navigate those complex choices. So I'll leave you with this question. With this new toolkit in hand, how are you going to approach the next ethical dilemma that comes your way?